Hello, I'm Kaustav Roy, Senior Product Manager at Celigo. Today I'll demo the third phase of API management, the Socialize phase. What if you could seamlessly document and socialize your APIs via a fully customizable developer portal? In the previous video, we have seen how to manage the security and governance for your APIs using plans and policies. And in this video, we will see how you can document your APIs, publish them to the developer portal, and enable your API consumers to easily discover, subscribe, and consume your APIs. Before we begin, let's understand what this portal is all about. The developer portal provides a centralized catalog of published APIs, where your partners, customers, or even your internal users can discover, explore, test, and subscribe to APIs. Now let's see these capabilities in action. First, ensure that the API is published, else you can click on this link to publish it. You can simply click on this link to access the developer portal. Note that your API consumers will need to register using their business or personal email IDs and then sign in to have access to the capabilities offered by the portal. After signing in, here in the dashboard page, they will find all their applications and their API subscriptions. And here they can see the catalog of APIs grouped into categories. Like here we have two categories, internal and external APIs, which you can configure in the APIM console. After selecting a category and an API, the consumers will be able to explore the API, read documentation in the Swagger format, and then authorize and test the API endpoints. As an API publisher, it's a best practice to document your APIs so that your consumers know what an API does and how it functions. To do that, select Documentation and view the OpenAPI spec, which is a standard format to define the structure of REST APIs. It includes the API metadata, such as the title, version, and description, the gateway URL, followed by the endpoint paths, the security scheme, and the request and response schema of the API endpoints. In case of exports and imports, the OpenAPI spec is automatically generated by Celigo. But in case of my APIs, you can only see the structure of the spec and you will need to update the documentation manually here based on the request and response schema of your API. Note that multiple endpoints can be documented in a single OpenAPI spec, or alternatively, you can create separate specs for separate API endpoints by adding a new Swagger page. By default, the security scheme is configured as API key authentication. Since in the previous video, we had also added the JWT and basic auth security schemes, you can update the OpenAPI spec accordingly so that your API consumers are aware of all the authentication types. You can do that by simply adding the OpenAPI spec snippet here. In an ideal scenario though, you will want to secure your API using one of the authentication schemes. You can enhance the usability of the portal by adding a home page. To do that, you can add a new markdown page, give it a name, set as home page, and publish the page. Then add some text using a markdown language like this, or directly use the WYSIWYG editor here. Once the changes are saved, you can see the home page over here. Ensure that all the pages are published, else you can click here to publish them. Alternatively, you can publish the page from the configuration tab. If you want to enable API consumers to test the APIs in the portal, select the Try It mode and make sure the CORS is enabled and is configured properly. CORS stands for Cross Origin Resource Sharing, which allows client web applications such as the portal to interact with resources in a different domain. The CORS configuration required to make test API calls from the portal is automatically configured, but you can make adjustments as necessary. Now let's see how your consumers can subscribe to the API. After signing into the portal and the applications page, they will need to create an application, give a name and description, click Next, enter the type and the client ID only if you want to subscribe to an API plan of type OAuth2 or JWT. Let's skip it for now. Find the API, select the plan and subscribe. For that particular plan, if you have the auto-validate subscription disabled, you will need to go to subscriptions and validate the subscription. Once validated, the API key can be seen by the consumer in the My Subscriptions tab. Once subscribed, in order to test the API, the consumers can click on Authorize, enter the API key, hit Try it out and execute. As you can see, it's a success. Testing an API successfully gives the API consumers confidence that the API works fine, and then they can start consuming the API in their applications. Note that once the plan is deprecated, it allows API consumers time to migrate to another plan or another API without breaking their application, while also ensuring new users do not subscribe to the deprecated plan. But once the plan is closed, the consumers who have not yet migrated to a new plan will indeed get impacted. Now let's look into the portal settings. Let's look into themes. By default, you will have this theme for the developer portal. But if you want to deliver an accessible and on-brand experience to your consumers, you can leverage the portal's theme customizations. Let's add a logo and a homepage banner for your business. Let's also change the color scheme by changing the header color and the menu color. Save the changes and enable it to apply the changes to the portal. You can also update the homepage title here. And it reflects in the portal as soon as you save it. Next, the API categories that we have seen earlier in the video can be updated here in the categories page. We will discuss portal analytics and notifications in our next video. So in this video, we have seen how you can document your APIs, publish them to the portal, and enable your API consumers to discover, subscribe, and consume your APIs in Celigo API management.